in a relationship with somebody that we don't know well, if the relationship is ever to be more than superficial, we need to be prepared to navigate below the surface toward things that matter. And that's sometimes kind of a rough way to go. But if you stop and think about it, just look around the room now at all the people that you know here. Everybody here, I don't think we have any first-time visitors this morning. Everybody here knows somebody. There was a point when everybody else in this room was a stranger. Even if you're sitting next to your spouse, there was a point when that person was a stranger to you. And somehow, you managed to navigate from a surface relationship into a meaningful relationship where you talk about things that matter. We navigate from the surface into things that matter in these relationships. A number of years ago, we were down at Little Grassy Church Camp near Carbondale in what was called an adventure camp. And this particular day, we were supposed to take all of the kids out canoeing on the lake down there, on Little Grassy Lake. And we had several adults that were in our group that were watching the kids. But according to the camp rules, we had to have somebody who was an official of the camp with us, who was a trained lifeguard. So the camp found us a 16-year-old girl who'd been trained, and we were required by law to take her with us on this canoe trip. And as I recall, she could not navigate her canoe very well, and she constantly was getting tangled up in some of the roots and some of the logs and some of the rocks, and we were constantly having to yell for the rest of the kids to wait while we rescued the lifeguard. But her ability at navigating was abysmal. And at one point she was trying to help herself, tried to get her canoe unstuck, and she fell out of the canoe and split her chin, so we had to give her first aid. But I mean, some people just can't navigate. And it doesn't matter whether you are a trained lifeguard or not. If you can't navigate, you're not going to do anybody any good. It doesn't matter how good our hearts are. It doesn't matter how wise we are. It doesn't matter how compassionate we are. It doesn't matter how many spiritual gifts that we have. It doesn't matter how deep our faith is if we can't navigate our way in a relationship toward the point we can share things that matter. And all of those particular gifts are of no use to us. We have to be able, in relationships, to navigate to the point that things matter. Now, I'm not sure that I want a deep relationship with everybody that I know. I don't know that I have the time or the energy or could handle the pain of knowing everything that's deep going on in somebody else's life. So I'm not saying that there's no value in a relationship that's only surface. Those relationships can be very refreshing and enjoyable to us and life-giving. But what I am saying is that we constantly need to be working in our relationships with a few people to go to the next level, to navigate our way down. So the way we navigate, I'm thinking again of a canoe trip. The way we navigate is we find where the currents are, particularly if you're on a river. You want to find where the currents are and let those currents carry you. And there are certain currents that will carry us deeper in relationships with other people. Our natural curiosity can carry us. The word curious, again, comes from a Latin word, and it's the same root as the word care. When we care about somebody, we want to know more about them. Just like if you care about gardening, you want to know more about it. If you care about the local football team, you want to know more about them. Until they start losing a lot, and then you want to learn, then you want to focus your attention on something else. Anything we care about, we want to know more about. We're eager to learn. And so curiosity, not nosiness, but curiosity helps us navigate into the deeper waters of a relationship. Compassion. Compassion comes naturally to all of us. Those feelings of compassion help us to navigate deeper into relationships with other people. Laughter and humor help us to navigate our way deeper into relationships, into the things that matter. To be able to not always take ourselves so seriously. To not always cower in the face of problems. But to have a little humor to show that we're not cowering. To help us through. There are some obstacles, some logs, some things we can that will upset our canoes in this navigating process. If we find ourselves in conversation always having to talk about ourselves, then that's probably going to be something that's going to tip our canoe over when we're trying to navigate our way to a deeper place. And sometimes that happens. It's always other people, of course. But you ever notice when you want to talk with somebody about something that's important to you and they switch the subject to themselves? Oh yeah, that happened to me. And it's always one step more dramatic than whatever's happening to you. So that's an obstacle in the way of navigation as we're trying to get to these things that really matter. We've got to be careful to not be too self-centered when we're having these conversations with other people if we want to get to a deeper point. We've got to be careful not to be judgmental. We've got to sometimes take our opinions and we've got to bracket them out. Every one of us in this room, there are things that we just don't like. There are certain characteristics about people in general that we can't stand. But sometimes we're going to have to bracket those out if we are going to follow the command of Christ to welcome a stranger. Navigate.